There used to be literal trolls, people who would just say shit on social media to be inflammatory. And while I think that still exists, I think that what is more common now is that everybody has a little troll in them. And I try to find the humanity in those folks and remember that they're not actually goblins or trolls.
Not everyone is at their best all of the time.
Right. Yeah. They're also human beings. Mm-hmm. And I try to keep that in my mind. I'm fine responding to things that are hateful or feel like they are going to make people feel unsafe. That's something I am happy to not tolerate. I am happy to tolerate somebody who's I think your food's dumb, or I don't like your restaurant. That's okay with me. I can just live with that and let it sit on my social media and move on with my life.
Hello, hospitable humans. Welcome back to True Hospitality. Alan here, coming to you from Poached Studios in Portland, Oregon. True Hospitality is More Fun Tomorrow's podcast where we explore inward hospitality, humble curiosity, and conflict competence to build capable culture. But today, we're excited to share part 4 in our special social media series we're calling On Social. We're taking time out to reflect on this complex topic through the lens of hospitality and to delve into some of the realities that go along with it. For this final installment in the series, Justin and I sat down with Portland Restaurateur and Hospitality maven, Mariah Pisha-Duffly. Since 2019, along with her creative partner and husband Tom, Mariah has become a champion for kaleidoscopic sensory exploration and warm hospitality with their sister restaurants, Gado and Oma's Hidaway. In the conversation you're about to hear, we discuss the evolving role social has played in her world over the years, and we pick up some practical tips on using this powerful tool without losing perspective on what matters most. Listen in for a super fun conversation with our friend Mariah as she drops some hospitable wisdom. As always, if you have questions or topics you'd like us to explore on True Hospitality, need help with your business, or want to learn more, go to morefuntomorrow.com, click on the Let's Talk button, and drop us a line. In the meantime, please help us spread the fun by clicking subscribe and giving us a 5-star rating wherever you get your podcasts, and share True Hospitality with your friends and coworkers. Thanks for listening.
Me now? I'm Mariah.
That's Mariah.
So, who's Mariah, Justin?
She's this nice lady right here. She is a local restaurant owner and operator and maven, a podcast veteran.
Yeah, a super podcast veteran. Yeah.
Yeah.
Long-time listener, first-time visitor.
Yes. All of those things.
Well, welcome to True Hospitality.
Thank you.
This is the More Fun Tomorrow podcast where we spend a lot of time talking about building capable culture in restaurants and workplaces in general. And one of the things that we've been talking about and thinking about a lot lately is social media and its role in our lives, in our businesses, in our just society in general. I think it's a time when a lot of folks are just kind of checking in on just the general nature of things, and it's a big influence on our lives.
Yeah, absolutely.
And we've worked together on and off through, past couple years, 3 years, and gotten to know each other quite a bit. And one of the things that I know about you and about, I think, Gado specifically, is that social media plays a really unique role in the origin story of your brands and your business, and that you kind of like social media.
Yeah, I guess I feel kind of neutral about social media.
Okay.
I think that social
neutral
media,
is the new like.
Yeah, I think it is a tool that can be used for good. It can be used for evil. It can be used anywhere in between. So I wouldn't say that I necessarily, it's too broad for me to be like, oh, I like it. I think
so. You're not going to fall into that trap.
No. And you nailed it. Social media is full of traps.
Yeah.
So I don't love that part of it, but there are other elements of social media that I think are really great. And I think it is a very, very powerful tool.
Yeah.
And that power is sometimes scary to me and sometimes really useful and helpful.
Yeah. Gado is a special restaurant now.
Thanks. Yeah, it's very special to me for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. It's Gado is kind of what I would maybe refer to as the flagship of your restaurant group.
Yeah.
And was your original pop-up.
Yeah.
That is now, I think it's currently nominated for Best Chef Northwest Pacific.
It is.
Through the James Beard Awards.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
Thank you so much.
That's super cool.
Thank you. Yeah, it feels pretty cool.
And it was kind of also the inspiration for a second restaurant also in Portland, kind of a, sister joint kind of across town. A grandma.
Sister grandma.
A grandma restaurant.
Sister grandma.
Yeah. Uh-huh. Totally.
Oma's Hidaway.
Yep.
But how did you come up with Gado, and when did this actually happen? That's kind of the leading question of
it's the origin story.
Yeah, the origin story, I guess.
So I'm going to try to give you the short version because the long version goes back to 2008 when me and Tom, who's my husband and partner at the restaurants, met and started kind of thinking about what type of restaurant we would want to have. This has always been a dream of ours to own a restaurant together.
Yeah.
We both have very long histories in the restaurant industry. Certainly that dream changed and evolved pretty drastically over the years. And we moved to Portland, Oregon from Portland, Maine, sort of with the idea in mind that this would likely be where that dream sort of became reality and where we opened something of our own. When we lived in Portland, Maine, we really sort of reignited our love and passion for the hospitality industry through this pop-up series that we did together. Tom in particular was feeling sort of burnt out and a little lost in the industry. We took a long trip to Indonesia together. We came back just feeling incredibly inspired, and Tom was like, I have to cook some of this food. So we started doing these pop-ups in Portland, Maine. And one of the things that was most exciting about it for me is it became this magnet for just cool people who like to do cool stuff of all different kinds. There was musicians that we would get involved, bartenders, bakers, media professionals. Just it became this kind of hub for creative people who wanted to do cool, fun stuff together. And that was so incredibly exciting to us.
Cool.
So when we moved out here, we were well, let's try to get a pop-up off the ground. And maybe that can be a vehicle for meeting other cool, fun people who like to do cool, fun stuff.
Yeah.
So we sort of started Gado as a way to introduce ourselves to the hospitality industry out here and as a vehicle for experimentation. Me and Tom are really into kind of change and spontaneity, and we have a lot of energy and a lot of ideas, and a pop-up can be a really fun way to experiment with a really wide variety of ideas. So we started Gado as a pop-up.
So you're we're really good at Portland in general. Let's go to another Portland and just take over.
Yep, exactly.
And we cut our teeth in one Portland. We've got our thing down.
Yeah, we like a Portland.
Let's go to the other one and just, we're ready to take it over.
Yeah.
So you came in with this strategy to create and find a community through a pop-up experience that you were already stoked about. How did you get the word out? How did you start that?
There was definitely, we had an Instagram page. It's the same Instagram page that is our restaurants. So if you go way back to the beginning, you'll find a blurry picture of a chicken wing in our little one-room basement apartment that we started prepping for the pop-up in. So there is certainly a social media element. I think that also like one of the incredible benefits of serving food and drinks is that like people will come talk to you while you're doing that. So we're able to also make a lot of in-person connections. And we hustled it and it grew.
That's awesome. Would you say if you like look back at like the growth of followers on your social media account and the like growth of your pop-up, success, are they pretty much like one-to-one and
this is where my unprofessionalism of social media comes in, because I am the type of like quote unquote social media manager that's like, I don't know. Like follower count has never been a big motivator for me. So it's not something that I track very carefully. I have no idea right now how many followers Omas and Gado have. Mm-hmm. There was a time on Instagram where like if you got to 10,000 followers, you could get like a swipe up to go to a different link. And when Instagram was like organized that way, that was sort of a goal in my mind where I was like, I want to get that fucking link. But aside from like that type of thing, I have never been very good at carefully following my follower count.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure if I had a big burst of social media growth as our pop-up grew.
Yeah. Sounds like you have a pretty good relationship, meaning like social media is your tool. You're not its tool in the way that some folks seem to feel like.
For me.
Yeah.
I'm definitely somebody who if I saw a post on Instagram the other day that was like this social media professional who had just gotten a new job, and she was like, my new boss updates our follower account and puts it on a big sign in my office every day, and that like motivates me. And I was like, ooh, I am the type of person that could be very motivated by that type of like numbers, gains, trackable progress, like feeding off of like maybe feeling like other people like you. Yeah. That's like a dangerous slippery slope for me that I don't want to wade into. So could I be the type of person that was like obsessed with my follower count? Absolutely. I choose not to allow myself to be that person because that is not the life that I want. Yeah. Also, for me, social media is a part of my job, but I have to be really mindful of like keeping the proportions of my job in balance. And if I let myself obsess over like every lost and gained follower, I would be neglecting some really important parts of my business and my job. So I try to like keep that tool in the box where it belongs and take it out when I need it and not live in that toolbox all the time.
Just when it starts to feel real good in your hand. And like, wait a sec.
That's when you got to put it down. Give it to Frodo. You've had enough. So I don't track that type of thing.
Have you always just known that about yourself and like you started to kind of feel this pull and you're like, oh, I'm going to go ahead and set a boundary? Or did you learn through trial and error what that means to you and what?
I think most people who have used social media a lot have felt the gratification of like, ooh, I got a lot of likes. Yeah. And that type of gratification is a little scary to me. Yeah. I really try in my life in general to not seek too much gratification from like feedback from other people. I think feedback is really helpful and important. I don't think that it is helpful if it is your North Star and guiding light and your purpose. So I try to consciously not chase that too much.
Right. Like if you're getting a little sugar pellet whenever you do something great, and then you're just like, okay, how can I just optimize for getting more sugar pellets.
Right.
Then you're like, wait a second, you're not actually doing something like that's impactful. You've just figured out how to get more sugar pellets.
And I'm not an influencer. I'm a restaurant operator.
Right.
So again, like that's part of my job, but I need to keep that part in balance and in proportion. And in order to do that, I need to create a professional boundary between like my personal feelings of self-worth and the audience of my business's social media.
That's super interesting to think about. I think where you may have relied heavily on social media when you were in pop-up mode, it was like you were either in pop-up and doing the event, or you were talking about the journey to the next one, or talking about like, using, photos or clips from the pop-up itself to, create this brand experience.
Yeah. Now
you've evolved into a multi-restaurant company, and I wonder how, like, you have a restaurant every day, and you kind of pop up on social media from time to time instead.
Very inconsistently. Yep. That's me.
But it's fascinating to think about. It's almost like flipped. Like you were in many ways like building this brand.
Yeah.
When you didn't have a spot that was yours yet.
Yeah.
And so you had this consistent like place that you could go, which was social media, and then you popped up in real life. And now you have this day-to-day real life, and you're popping up on social media to do something different than maybe you were in the past. How is that role in its, as far as the purpose it serves your business today, how is it different than that purpose way back when in 20 whatever?
I mean, I think sort of similar to any social interaction. When you first initiate a connection, you're kind of like introducing yourself, right? Mm-hmm. You're like, this is a little bit of what we're about. We like a lot of bright colors. We're energetic.
When you first meet somebody.
Yeah, you're kind of trying to give them like the quick, like, okay, here's a little zoomed out view of who I am, right? Yeah. We're maximal. We like a lot of flavor. We're fun. We're energetic. We like bright colors. These are some dishes that we're interested in. Like we like char. We like sour, spicy, whatever. And now the job's a little different. So it is reminding people of all of those things, reminding them who you are. It's also about, because we have these brands that are sort of ever changing and evolving, it's about bringing people along on that journey. So like the Gado that we are now is certainly not the Gado that we were when we were a pop-up, and social media has played an active role in like taking people on that journey with us. And then also, a lot of people don't know about our journey or our past. So sometimes I find it really fun and helpful to be like, hey, just reminding you, like, this is who we are. This is what our journey has been like. Thank you so much to everybody who's been on the journey with us. Welcome to everybody who's just getting here, type of thing. And then also as a more mature, 6-year-old restaurant, sometimes the purpose of social media is just to be like, hey guys, just a reminder, we're still here doing cool stuff. Don't forget about us. So, different posts have different purposes. I think some of the purposes that I revisit are like reminding people that we exist and that we're doing cool stuff. Taking people a little deeper into like a personal, like, this is what the journey has been like for us post. Sometimes it's like to promote something specific. We're doing a cool event or a pop-up and we want people to know about it. And sometimes it's just I believe that one of the best ways to connect with people is to just like put yourself out there and hope that people find something that they are connected to in what you're saying. So sometimes on social media, my purpose is just to like put some stuff out there about myself and see if anybody is into the same weird stuff that I'm into.
Yeah. So is that on your personal Instagram, or is that also as
No, it's also
Gado
on the
Gado?
restaurants for sure.
You're like, by the way, we think this is super cool and we're a little weird, and maybe you're a little weird
and
too.
it's like,
What do you
if
think?
you opened a restaurant, you might post like a mood board to be like, hey, this is what you should expect when we open. Here's like some art we think is cool, or some music we like, or like a party that we think looks awesome, or whatever it is. And I still do that here and there with both Gado and Oma's, because I want to take people along on this evolution with us. And I think that social media can be a really powerful tool for updating people on kind of where you're at without giving them a news brief or something.
I actually really appreciate that about your, specifically Gado Gado, the way that you interact with social media there, that it does feel personal. It makes the story of Gado Gado feel more personal. Like, there are pictures of you carrying your daughter as a baby in the restaurant while you're working, and not a lot of other restaurants like in the same sort of tier or class as Gado Gado. Not a lot of, best chef, James Beard nominated restaurants do that sort of thing. And what is why is it so important for you to, because the voice of Gado Gado feels very much like, because I know you, Mariah, like it feels like your voice. There's no specific brand voice that you have created that's different.
Yeah.
Like, why is that so important to you? And how are you able to stay true to that and open up and be personal without inviting negativity or giving too much away? Like, how are you thinking about that?
Thank you so much for asking that. I definitely keep in mind a lot that the voice that I use on social media, I try to be really conscious of it being my voice and not pretending that like Gado Gado is a person who has its own voice. That is something that I think is totally great for some brands. For me, that's not something that I feel comfortable with, because it doesn't feel genuine to who I am. And I don't know how to do that other thing. Like, I think there are people who are very good at creating a voice that is a voice of the restaurant and not necessarily their own personal voice. That is not where my skill set lies or where I am going to be most engaged. I really believe that part of the power of Gado Gado is that it is a very personal brand. I think you walk into that restaurant and you see, a portrait of Tom's grandmother. You see a picture of Dolly Parton that I've had since I was 9 years old. Like, there's a lot of us in that restaurant, and that's on purpose. Like, we want people to walk in and know a little bit about us and have something to connect to that is personal. And, like, real recognize real. Like, people respond to that.
Yeah.
And that feels really satisfying to me on a personal level, to be seen in that way and to have the opportunity to connect to other people. So I do intentionally use my own voice, and I think it can be really challenging to do that in social media. So I have set that as like a personal intention, and I put effort towards being like, no, don't try to be something you're not. Be yourself. People will respond to that, or they won't.
Yeah.
And in terms of like negativity and the response from people, I do think that for the most part, people appreciate genuine personal expression. I think just as humans, it's something that we crave and tend to respond positively to. There are certainly, instances where people haven't responded purely positively, and I try to just, water off a duck's back, that stuff.
Yeah.
I try the same way where I try not to be super motivated by likes. I try not to be super motivated by the fear of people's negativity or by like a comment here and there. I think while I try to remember that I'm a human on social media, I don't necessarily have the expectation that everybody else is like super in touch with their humanity or my humanity on social media. And like, that's okay. That's where like my neutral stance on social media comes in. Like, that's just part of it to me. And I am willing to just coexist with some negativity that it just is inherent in social media.
How do you think about coming back to the idea of the brand voice and the way that you show up at Gado Gado shows up as a reflection of you and your family and the experience of that? How is that different from the way that you handle the Oma's Instagram presence or like social media presence?
I think Oma's is still me for sure, and Tom, and is still like a personal expression. I think that Oma's as a restaurant represents a little bit of a different side of our personalities. And so I tend to try to get in touch with that side of myself when I'm posting from Oma's. It's a little more irreverent, a little freer, a little like, I don't know. Somebody once wrote about us that we have like a hippie-ish confidence that I really like. For some reason, I was like, yes, that is absolutely correct. I do. We have this sort of like naive confidence thing that I think Oma's is really in touch with. I think at this point, Gado is like a little bit more mature. And so some of that sort of naive confidence goes over to Oma's. Gado has this different storytelling voice that is still definitely part of me. But, you know, like we're all multifaceted and have a bunch of different elements of our personalities. So Oma's is definitely still, I definitely still use my own voice and remember that I'm a human being when I post from that account, but I get in touch with some different elements of my personality that I think align better with that brand.
So Oma's is like a confident hippie that's like out on the road meeting people, and Gado is like they've made it all the way back
Gado
around,
has their
and
homestead
they've
where
got
they're
their
making
stead,
prints in the
and
wheat
they're like,
and like, you know,
wise hippie, but
Yeah,
still
yeah.
a hippie.
Mm-hmm,
Hell
totally.
yeah.
And like I am both of those things
Right?
also.
Sometimes
like,
I gotta roll.
yeah,
I gotta hit the road.
And like, you know, when we opened Gado, I was pregnant with my daughter, but I wasn't a parent. And I feel like Gado, you know, I've grown up a lot since we opened Gado. And I feel like Gado has come along on that growth journey with me and Tom. And so it represents, you know, 6 years of growth and change. And Gado's been through a lot also. Like Gado was opened 8 months before COVID started. I came back from maternity leave for a week and a half before we pivoted to takeout for the first time. Like Gado has been through a lot, and we've been through a lot with Gado, and that's all reflected in that voice as well. Oma's opened during COVID as a pop-up. It has a little bit more irreverence because of that, and that sort of that time and place are built into its brand and are built into my experience with that brand. So that part of my voice is more likely to come out in Oma's than in Gado.
I think that's so fascinating. Super cool to hear you talk about it because, you know, walking into both of those restaurants and also just, you know, connecting with you and your teams, it's infectious and hospitable to be there. And
Thank
so
you.
the fact that you intentionally have kind of exposed your true selves, not only on social media, but on the four walls of each of them, and then each of them have this like just true organically derived voice, is so welcoming. It's so like, it's like the essence of hospitality to kind of extend just an openness and connection and maybe a little vulnerability with that sets everyone at ease right away, and also gets them to kind of drop their guard and get curious and start to explore. And I know that just in talking to you and just hanging out with you over the years, exploration is a big driver of why you are in this business. I think it's fair to say that that's something that you really love and thrive on. What are some of the things that you're currently excited about exploring next?
Ooh, good question.
Is social media going to have a large part in that exploration, or is it kind of taking a further backseat as the company evolves?
Good question. I think social media will likely always play a role in being a voice for the restaurants.
Yeah.
I think things that I'm most excited to explore right now, I think in general, our company has sort of taken a turn over the last year from having a focus of like external growth to having a focus on internal growth. And kind of what I mean by that is like, rather than trying to spread out really wide and open a bunch of new places and pick up a bunch of new work, we're feeling really inspired by the 2 spaces that we have right now and how we can go as deep into those spaces as possible rather than going super wide. And that's not to say like we won't ever do anything else. Who knows? But I am definitely inspired by Oma's and Gado right now and thinking about what is it about those 2 brands that have kept our interest over the past few years. Me and Tom are both very like easily distracted people. I wouldn't say that focus.
Easily inspired.
Yeah,
that's it.
totally. I wouldn't say that focus is our biggest strength. So I know
it doesn't get in the way. Your focus does not get in the way.
No, but I know that if something is able to keep our focus, other people are going to be interested in that thing too. Like,
oh yeah,
we have a dish roti. It's this flatbread that we have had on the menu since Gado opened. That bread has kept Tom's attention for so many years. And like that beyond, even if I had never tasted it and I didn't know how special it was for myself, the fact that it's been able to keep Tom's focus for this long tells me a lot about how special it actually is. And in some ways, I feel that way about Oma's and Gado Gado too. Like those are both brands that we continue to find inspiration in. And I think we're both really excited to sort of have the right teams in place to be able to be free enough to follow that inspiration with them. So that is sort of what I'm feeling most excited about right now. There's a bunch of menu changes happening. There's some more sort of pop-ups and events in the works. And I feel like we're really seeing our team blossom and be able to be full participants in that exploration with us. And that has been super, super exciting and inspiring.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
That's amazing work. To think about the 2 of you, you know, in your like road hippie days, rolling from Portland to Portland, arriving here and connecting with the community.
Lucky.
And now you're sitting in a place of inspiration by the things that you've created, Oma's and Gado, and the teams that, you know, been formed around those ideas and what they're doing.
Yeah.
And so you've built quite a community.
Thank you. I think it's been really challenging because we opened so close to the pandemic to find ways to connect with our community over time, and the ways that we've connected with community have really shifted. So I think we're feeling really excited to be in a place now where we can connect in a more physical space by doing things like pop-ups. There was a time when like social media was a much bigger part of the way we connected with our community because we were all quarantining. We weren't allowed to use the tools that we were used to using in our restaurant life. So yeah, I think social media will always play a part in that connection, but I feel grateful that social media can be like flirting now and we can do our dating in person. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, you can keep that tool in the box.
Yeah.
Pull it out every once in a while versus just like have to hold on tight to it just to get through crazy chaos.
Yeah. And like there just
time.
weren't a lot of opportunities for connection and hospitality. And so social media was a very powerful one. And I feel really grateful for that. And I feel really grateful now to have some other tools in that connection toolbox so that I don't have to rely so heavily on that one tool.
Sounds like a balance.
For now.
Yeah.
I hope so.
Yeah.
Appreciate
Yeah.
that.
We talked about kind of at the beginning of our conversation having a neutral take on social media, and it can be, a powerful tool for the, forces of good or for the forces of ill, or, it can be distraction or whatever. One of the things that we are fascinated about, we meaning Justin and I, and More Fun Tomorrow in general, is the evolving presence of social media in our lives and its impacts, both positive, negative, or unforeseen. And this general question of, is it a hospitable force in the world?
Yeah.
Maybe it all adds up to neutral. I don't know. Maybe it all adds up to super positive. Maybe it adds up to
humanity a
negative.
positive force in the world? Are
Right.
people like,
Yikes.
I think that there's so many, I think that the question of like whether almost anything is a positive force in the world is like, it's a tricky question.
Yeah. You're not going to fall into that trap either.
No.
She saw you coming.
Yeah. Well, I think, one of the things that we've been reflecting on is just the negative sides of
Yeah.
social media, and pausing to think about, well, do we need to change our relationship with it? And it sounds like through this conversation, you've shared with us how its role in your life and your business has evolved and changed. And you have also found this healthy relationship with it as something that is, to be used, but not to be used by,
Yeah.
I wonder how you think about it in your personal life and how that's changed, if we can go there.
Yeah.
Just because when I think about a community, I think about a bunch of individuals, and everyone's individual relationship with social media can be in a different place. And there's a growing percentage of folks that are really questioning whether or not they feel good about interacting with something that is taking them out of the real moment, or the real life connection, or just consuming a lot of their time, or drawing their attention towards things that are maybe negative, or comparing themselves to the ideal more often than not, and its impact on, their families or their neighbors or whatever.
Yeah.
And I wonder, like, going forward, where to draw the line of what it's for and what it's not, and how do you as a parent, or how do you as just a family think about social media a little differently than maybe you as a business owner?
Yeah. I mean, I am lucky that my child right now is too young to know about social media. I definitely
Enjoy that.
I definitely feel worried about her growing up in a world that is so steeped in social media. I feel really lucky that, like, I was in my late teens before I found out about Friendster and MySpace.
Yeah,
And
those were the days.
yeah. I remember when Facebook was like, you had to be invited by somebody,
In
I
college.
didn't exactly. So I feel worried about the way it impacts, teens and young people. And I feel lucky that I didn't have to worry about that as a teenager myself. I use social media in my personal life now, not very much. My primary use is I have a private Instagram account and I post, videos of my kid a lot because there are a lot of people I know that I don't get to see all the time.
Yeah.
And I love getting to watch their families grow up and knowing about their kids without necessarily having the privilege of spending a bunch of time with them and their kids. So I use it that way. I also, I'm somebody who's really interested in art and music, and I'll often, I just posted yesterday in my stories because I saw this video clip of this band that I love who I hadn't seen a lot of live footage of. And there was this really cool video of them performing in the late 70s. And I was like, oh, I'm going to share this in my stories because I know my brother Brady loves this band and he's probably never seen this clip. And then we can talk about this clip and that will be so fun for us.
Yeah.
So, I don't use it in my personal life as a tool for people to get to know me, which I do in the restaurants. For me personally, that's not what I use social media for.
That's interesting. So it's like people that you already know and you're connected with, you'll direct them to hey, here's a place where we can communicate.
I don't even direct them. It's I don't know, sort of similar with restaurants. I have very few followers on my personal social media. I'm not trying to gain followers on my personal social media.
You're just I'm going to use this tool to send you updates on my life and vice versa.
Yeah. If you are on Instagram and you are curious if my daughter can do the monkey bars or not, I encourage you to give me a follow. Other than that, please don't.
Of all the social media accounts that I miss, your personal one is one of them.
Well, thank you.
Because I quit Instagram a few months back, and your daughter is really cute.
And I don't post very consistently on my personal page or on my business pages. I just sort of let myself do what I want. And I think that a lot of the evil side of social media comes from feeling like there is an expectation that you're not meeting or a way that you have to be that you're not being. And I try in my life in general to push up against the feeling that you have to do or be anything. And I think that is particularly present in social media.
I'm curious about that, what you were just saying as it relates to businesses, because I think that one of the things that we've seen in the last few years, I feel like since the pandemic specifically, and a lot of the social issues that were bubbling to the surface, there has been a lot of pressure on businesses to use their social media as a platform to speak out or speak up for or take a stand on certain things. And I know from having talked to you about it in the past that is something that's a type of pressure that you as a business owner have experienced and something that you've been that you've had feelings about. How do you handle those things?
Yeah. I mean, I believe that when you have a platform, standing up for what you believe in is important. I also believe that sometimes the idea that sometimes I question the purpose of posting your sort of your views on social media every time you have the opportunity. I think there are times when it's really important to say loudly what you believe. And I would never take that away from anybody. And I think that social media can be a perfectly fine place to do that. I also think we've all seen a ton of virtue signaling on social media, a ton of businesses who say something that maybe they don't even really mean, or maybe they're not able to act on. And I just feel like, in general, opening yourself up to being controlled by an infinite number of people online is something I'm not interested in opening myself up to. And
That sounds like a pro tip.
Yeah, I think
Not recommended.
I would certainly not recommend that. Yeah, it
Yeah.
doesn't work for me. And I believe that we can have thoughts and feelings and take actions on all kinds of things without necessarily posting about it online.
Yeah.
I do it every day.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that it can be really powerful to stand fully in your beliefs on social media, and it can be a really wide audience for that, for some really powerful messaging. I also think that it can be a trap to feel like you have to explain every single belief that you have on social media. I don't necessarily think it's the best place for that. I think that social media is really good for saying a headline. I don't think it's very good for explaining the meat of an article.
Yeah.
I think that social media often lacks the context that conversation around sensitive topics requires. So while if there's a headline I want to say, sure, I'll say it on social media. But if it's like deeper than that, if it's a full conversation, I don't feel as comfortable engaging in depth on social media.
How have you navigated that internally? Like when because I think, we're talking about Gado as a brand, but it's also a brand that is represented by your employees and people that work for you, and they all have feelings and opinions and beliefs that they want to share, or they think that you should, or their company should share those beliefs or publicize those beliefs. How have you navigated conflict in those spaces where that comes up?
Yeah. Luckily, I don't think that's come up a ton. I think that people understand that our Instagram account, again, I try to be really conscious of like speaking for myself and not speaking on behalf of other people, because I think that's also a trap. Like, I don't want to put words in anybody else's mouth or be responsible for being a voice for anybody else, because I'm not capable of doing that. So I think that expectation is something I'm pretty comfortable explaining to people, that like, I totally support you having a voice, and I'm not going to be that voice for you, because that wouldn't be helpful for you or appropriate for me.
Right.
So I'm pretty comfortable setting that boundary. That being said, if people have like specific things that they're interested in me posting on social media, like, I'm always down to hear about it. You know what I mean? There's a chance that like, yeah, maybe I'll be like, totally, this is awesome. This really resonates with me. So it's kind of case by case. And I think for the most part, our team fully understands that the Instagram account is a representation of me and Tom and the restaurant and our journey, and that our team is certainly part of all of that. But I'm not necessarily in a place where my goal is to be the voice of the entire team, because I like for them to be able to speak for themselves also.
Yeah.
Good. I love that. Another thing that I know that businesses and that, you have dealt with is I don't know how else to say it, but the Yelpification of social media. The idea that, like you sort of hinted at, that the people on the other end don't always see you as a human. And so they feel emboldened by that when it comes to reaching out to provide, we'll call it feedback, whether or not it's not it's meant that way or is actually meant to hurt you. How do you handle those things? I think, coming back to how Gado started and like the time frame, there was a big social media restaurant industry moment.
Indeed.
I knew we'd get
that we've
this
talked
eventually.
Yeah, absolutely. There has been. I mean, I think in hospitality in general, one of the sort of guiding forces that I try to keep in mind is always, it feels hospitable to me to be as generous as I can be in my interpretation of what's going on for other people, right? So like when somebody writes something on my Instagram, I try to remember that like not only am I a person, they are also a person. Often a person that I know nothing about. And so I find it helpful to me to think of like, okay, I'm reading this comment and it's giving me a certain feeling that maybe I feel attacked, maybe I feel bad, maybe it's making me upset, whatever. I try to remember that like another person wrote that. And I try to give that other person the most generous interpretation I possibly can. Which is I'm like, maybe when they said nice try, I'm reading that like, nice try, asshole. But they're thinking about it like,
nice try.
Good job.
Nice
you
try.
tried.
Yeah, I like
Even if I know that's not true, I'm like, is there a 1% chance that that's true? Because if there is, that's what I'm going to believe. Because it doesn't actually do me any good to believe anything else. Like I said, like we don't have a lot of context. So I like to imagine positivity into context that does not exist.
Yes.
That feels really helpful to me. And it also helps me to remember that I think social media, one of the things we're told is that we have to respond to it immediately, right? Like
Clock's
it's
ticking.
all happening in real time. People saw that you saw their DM, whatever.
People are waiting. They're wondering.
Yeah, I try to remember that actually, like, I am not the most important thing in their lives, and that their DM to me is likely not the most important thing in their life. They're likely not staring at their phone, wondering if I've read their message or not, because, like, my business account just isn't the center of people's lives. And so I try to also slow it down. So, like, I'll see a comment that maybe feels a little negative to me. I'm like, I'm just going to let that simmer. I am going to come up with my most generous interpretation of why somebody wrote that comment, of what they meant by that comment. And a day from now, if I still care about it, maybe I'll think about if there's a way I want to respond. But likely a day from now, I won't care about it anymore. And then I also ask myself, like, is this comment creating a feeling of unsafety for anyone? Like, if a comment is just like, I don't like your food, like, that's okay. You know, people are entitled to their opinion. And, you know, again, like, my generous interpretation of that is I'm like, maybe they just don't like spicy food. Or like whatever. I'm like, maybe
they just learned something about themselves.
Like exactly. Awesome. They're not gonna come to my restaurant. Like, that's okay. I don't have to be the restaurant for everyone. But if somebody is coming on with things that feel hateful or are gonna make people feel unsafe, or I think that even in my most generous interpretation are like immoral, I'm happy to respond at that point. And you know, I was thinking on the way over here about like some sort of social media like cliches, and this idea of like don't feed the trolls is like this old social media cliche. Mm-hmm. And I was thinking about that because on the one hand, I think that's helpful. And on the other hand, I think that social media, like there used to be literal trolls, people who would just say shit on social media to be inflammatory. And while I think that still exists, I think that what is more common now is that like everybody has a little troll in them. And I try to find the humanity in those folks and remember that like they're not actually goblins or trolls.
Not everyone is at their best all of the time.
Right. Yeah. Like they're also human beings. Mm-hmm. And I try to keep that in my mind. So yeah, I'm fine responding to things that are like hateful or feel like they are going to make people feel unsafe. That's something I am happy to not tolerate. I am happy to tolerate somebody who's like I think your food's dumb, or like, I don't like your restaurant. Like, that's okay with me. I can just live with that and let it sit on my social media and move on with my life.
That is, that whole description that you just gave, I was just thinking about your initial response is to be generous and to interpret everything as possibly neutral or maybe positive.
Yeah.
Like, let's just start with an intention of hospitality. I'm going to, in my reaction, serve them with a bit of open-mindedness.
Yeah.
And I'm going to be curious.
Yeah.
About maybe what's going on, and recognizing that there is a person there that maybe having their best day or their worst day, or maybe it was like auto-corrected in a funny way. Who knows what happened?
Maybe they're 12.
Yeah,
and they're
totally.
just like messing around with being a jerk on the internet. Like, who am I to stand in the way of that?
Maybe
Maybe
it's somebody that like doesn't speak English as a first language,
Who
and
knows?
like there's some like misinterpretation there. Who knows?
Yeah.
But the humble curiosity of that being something that you intentionally cultivate before you feel the need to react and respond, I think is like pretty evolved.
Yeah, I believe in like humble curiosity as a person and in human to human interaction a lot. I think when it comes to social media, there is an interesting difference in the way I handle that curiosity. Whereas it sort of speaks to the whole like headline versus whole article thing. In person to person communication, like if Justin was to say to me like, I think your restaurant's dumb, my curiosity might lead me to be like,
I would never say that. I love her restaurants. Don't let her paint this picture of me.
And you're also always someone that's super diplomatic. You would
I would
never
use way better language.
You are much more well spoken than that. Absolutely.
Sorry, I didn't mean to.
But if you said that, I would be like, tell me more.
Your
Why
curiosity
do you think
would be
that?
would
My
be
curiosity
like,
would be piqued,
acted on.
and I would want to act on that curiosity and find out more. With social media, because I do think it's more a tool of headlines than full articles, I actually don't want to ask those follow-up questions. Right. Because I am happy living in the naive confidence of my most generous interpretation. I actually don't think it's a great context for me to follow that thread and ask those follow-up questions that might satisfy my curiosity. I think with social media, it's much more beneficial for me to let that curiosity exist and be okay with not knowing the answer to those questions. I still have the curiosity to ask them and to maybe make up some imaginary story in my head that serves my own goals. But I think one of the differences in the way I interact on social media versus in real life person-to-person contact is I don't think it's the best place to actually follow that curiosity.
That's great.
Humble curiosity and confident hippie together.
That's
in that
me.
moment. Like, I'm curious, but I'm confident just letting it be.
I'm okay not knowing.
Like,
I don't need
cool.
to know.
And you draw that line and don't react or respond with that, oh, tell me more. What did we do? Because you could just spend all day just in like these misfiring dialogue on social media because it is built for headlines, not for nuanced communication? Or is it that you sense that maybe conflict will arise if you're responding to everything that you feel like is a challenge to?
It's all of that. It's that I think it could throw my balance off if I decided to invest my time into following every curiosity that social media brought up for me. I would just be in my phone.
What'd you do today,
24/7.
Mariah?
Yeah, like, ooh, you would not want to know the answer to that question if I followed every internet curiosity I ever had.
Yeah.
And I also think that I'm okay with social media being a place of surface connection. And I don't necessarily, I'm happy to live in my naive positivity on social media in a way that I am not happy to do in my regular life. I believe that dealing in reality in your regular life is super important. I think dealing in reality on social media is almost impossible, and it's not really my goal.
I love that.
So, like, I'm happy to show up in the most real way I can and be myself, but I don't necessarily have an expectation that social media is real or that other people are going to act real or that I'm going to find reality if I explore social media enough. So I've sort of removed reality as a goal.
Yes.
And I'm happy to just tell myself a pleasant story and live in that space on Instagram instead and save reality for the real world.
Yes to that.
I love that.
As a, I don't know, I would say someone that is influential in the restaurant space, that is engaged in the social media world as part of your business, and that has kind of been in that conversation for the past few years. How would you say, because I don't have the same bird's eye view that you do as a participant that you are, how would you say that just the industry's relationship with social media has evolved from, say, 2019 to now? And
Yeah.
is it just become more and more frothy and important, or is it kind of ebbed and flowed and now it's on a, like, you know?
I think that people... Okay, I'm going to use a metaphor that is going to be completely lost on Alan, but I bet Justin will get, which is a reality TV metaphor.
Okay, great.
Okay.
So oftentimes with reality TV, for example.
I do know reality TV exists.
Do you?
I do. Yeah.
Okay, great. So we have a foundation we can build from.
It's completely
So
made up bullshit.
like the first season of Survivor or of Drag Race, they're not self-aware. They don't know what the goal of the show is. They don't know how the show is going to edit them. So they are themselves, and it is scary for them because people come for them. The editors edit what they're saying in a way that makes them sound really evil. And then by the time you get to like season 10, people are aware of the way they're going to be watched. They're aware of the way they're going to be reacted to and the way that they're going to be edited. So people show up as a much more sort of palatable version of themselves. Maybe they don't game it. Yeah, maybe they don't say that bitchy thing that they were thinking about the other contestants' outfit. Or maybe they have some fucked up viewpoint that they know people are going to have a negative reaction to, so they keep it to themselves. And I feel like I've watched over the years people become aware of the fact that they are being perceived on social media, and that even if you delete what you posted, somebody took a screenshot of it and it's forever. And so I think that social media has become a much more polished place, which again, I feel fairly neutral about. I think there are things about that that are fine, good and fine. And there are things about that that like bum me out a little bit. But I think, so I've seen a lot more polish and a lot less sort of like raw reality.
Less off the cuff spontaneity.
Yeah. People are aware of the consequences of what they post now in a way that they weren't when social media first sort of really took off. And then I also think as a business, when we opened Gado in 2019, we were posting about ourselves, and maybe other people would post about us sometimes, just like regular people going out to dinner. I think that we've seen a giant uptick in the number of like food influencers and social media has really evolved over the last 6 years into a much bigger field than I would have anticipated in 2019.
And how are you, because I think, we think about social media as a branch of a business's marketing tactic. Like, how are you using social media, and how are you interacting with the sort of new media influencers and even traditional media? Like, how has your relationship with that evolved?
It's changed a lot, and I feel like that's something that I'm definitely still finding my footing in. I think that it can be something that I'm not super comfortable with, is when there's like a very blurry line between personal relationships and like transactional relationships. And so something that I have really shied away from is like trying to cultivate personal relationships in order to leverage like social media power, or like I don't want to develop personal relationships with people because secretly I just want something for my business, which I think is easy to have happen when you are trying to get a bunch of influencers to post about your business. I don't think that as a business we've sort of ignored that branch of social media, which I don't think is necessarily the best strategy. I just don't think that I have found my comfort space yet in like how to dovetail what we do with what food influencers do. I have a lot of respect for what they do. I think that food I do. I think
That's
that
generous.
I think that there is an opportunity for people to learn about businesses that they would never learn about through food influencers. And I think that you get a lot more variety in terms of the demographic of people who are able to be food influencers than you do. I think it's a much more diverse demographic than the demographic of like traditional food media. And I think that's really great and super interesting. And like, I follow a bunch of food influencers. I find it really helpful. Like, they help me know what's going on in Portland, which is something I'm really interested in. So I definitely appreciate the field as a consumer. I don't think I have tapped into it as like a marketing professional in the most effective way yet. And I'm not sure how that will develop over time.
It feels safe to say that social media was a big part of the early years of establishing your brand, and things would be very different today if it did not exist. You would have had a different trajectory. Who knows? Who knows what that alternate future would have looked like? Now that you are established and you have this different balance of attention and interaction that we talked about, what if you could imagine if we just turned it off? What would your day-to-day and your strategy look like going forward without social media? And kind of what would be lost, and what would maybe be just where you would kind of make up the ground that it would have represented?
It depends on if it was turned off just for me or
for everyone,
the entirety of the industry.
World,
okay.
for consciousness.
If social media was just like, oh, social media broke, nobody has it anymore, I think that we would see other more traditional forms of media fill some of those holes pretty immediately, and very little would change. I think that instead of doing a post of like, hey, we're doing this barbecue series, I would be trying to reach out to a food writer to promote that series. And a lot of the more day-to-day, here's some music I think is cool would be lost. But when you came to the restaurant, you would still hear that music and it would be found in other ways. And I think that from a business perspective, very little would actually change, which I find really reassuring because, like I said, I am not a super consistent poster. I'm not somebody who's like, I post 5 days a week. I'm like, I post when I remember or when I feel inspired to or when I feel like I have something to say. Otherwise, I don't post, and it doesn't matter. It's not like my sales are higher on days that I post or there's any trackable concrete correlation between like posting and the success of my business. It's a little more nuanced, and I do think it's an effective tool, but if that tool went away, we would find different tools to get the same message out.
What great anscer.
Yeah, that was a good answer. Good job.
What
She's a podcast veteran. Right?
Yeah, I know. We're not. So
you guys can't see how much I'm talking with my hands, though. That's what's really lost.
That's right. So what's next? What do you think the next like medium or mode of connection?
You know what's fascinating to me about that is like, so I'm 40. I have Instagram. I don't have TikTok. I don't have Snapchat. I don't have sort of like the social media of the younger generation. And from what I've heard talking to some like actual professional marketers, they're like, yeah, having a restaurant on TikTok is like good for you, but it doesn't actually translate to success in your business as effectively as Instagram does, which I think is really interesting. I don't know how true that is or untrue. But I find that somewhat reassuring because I am not going, again, I'm 40. I'm never going to have a video that's like super cool on TikTok. It's just not in the cards for me.
Watch me do this dance.
And I have to be okay with that. Yeah. So who knows what's next? I feel really comfortable with not knowing what's next. I also feel comfortable with the idea that like I might not be part of what's next, and that will be okay with me too. If there's like a new social media that all the restaurants are on and it's really working for them, awesome. I might be into whatever it is. I might not. And I feel the thing that makes me feel the most comfortable is knowing that whatever is next, I will be able to decide if it's a tool that's going to be useful for me in my business or not. And everybody doesn't have to make the same choice. So I feel really comfortable approaching what's next with curiosity, discovering whether it's something that I like or find useful, knowing that whatever decision I make about that is not a decision that I have to maintain forever. I can change my mind 1,000,000 times. So all of those things make me feel reassured in not knowing what's next. And like, luckily, I'm not a social media producer. I don't have to know what's next. Somebody's going to tell me. It's going to be everywhere. And at that point, I can decide what I want to do with that information.
Hell yeah.
And I think what's next depends a lot on what is next for the world.
Yeah.
So we'll see.
We will. Is there another Portland out there that we need to know about?
You know, my daughter's really into outer space right now, which means that I am really into outer space right now. And as
have
a
you
grown-up,
not always been into outer space though?
I mean, it ebbs and flows. Okay, fair enough.
Okay.
But the way that shows up for me right now is I'm obsessed with like infinity and parallel universes and the idea of infinite worlds. So now I got into that and I totally forgot your question.
Well, it had to do with the infinite Portland portal.
Oh yeah. So is there another Portland? There are infinite Portlands is my answer. And we'll see which ones reveal themselves to me and which ones this version of me gets to be a part of. But there are right now infinite Portlands happening all around us.
I feel like the mushrooms are starting to kick in.
Yeah,
You're
exactly.
welcome.
Well, let the exploration continue with hippie confidence.
Yeah. You can't stop it even if you want to.
Can't stop, won't stop. Yeah. Let's go. More fun then.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. What have you learned today, Justin?
What have I learned?
Yeah.
I've learned all sorts of things. I've learned that you can have as a business owner, you can have a healthy relationship, but it takes a lot of intention and a lot of thoughtfulness.
I feel like I learned some things about the relationship between the tool and, when to use it and how to use it. And I think I can imagine, new business owners that are thinking about their first pop-up and starting an Instagram account and all that, hearing your journey with all of that and benefiting from some of this wisdom. So thanks for making the time to be open and share it.
Thank you.
I think it's super cool, and we're huge fans.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you so much, Sam.
As always, if you have a particularly tricky situation you're dealing with and you have questions for us, or you just want to join the discussion, go to morefuntomorrow.com, click the Let's Talk button, and fill out the form. We'd love to hear from you. Now, More Fun Tomorrow is not on social media, but you can follow Poached Jobs on any of your favorite social media platforms where we cover everything related to hospitality. We have a lot of fun over there, so we'd love to see you. If you have any questions for us, email social@poachedjobs.com, and we'll get right back to you. Bye for now.